Retro Hangover, supported via Patreon by listeners like you. We would especially like to thank patrons Lyle McKarns, Ashton Ruby, Randall Quiggle, Tony G, Studstill Smash the Milkman, Katie Quigg, Paul Romalho, Raging Demon JC, Meagan Caruso, MaskedKeaton, Andrew Liguori, Ozzy Garcia, The Retro Vixen, Adam from The Good, the Bad, the Backlog, Thunderdome Gaming Society, Dischimera, Jenny E, Rick Firestone, ParallaxPuddles, Soha, Keith Gasper, Dave Jackson, Eric Gess, Kayla Jackson, Nomad from the Retro Wildlands podcast, Ashevent, Alan Bingham, Storm Beagle, Ryan Player 1, and Mike the Rep from Backbreaker Gaming. Your continued engagement and generous donations are deeply appreciated. Welcome to The Flight, a consumable curation of champions and catastrophes that is considerate of your chronometer. It's me, Chris, and you're listening to Retro Hangover's Flight, and we don't have anyone showing up in the middle of this episode to say anything else because it is just myself. And, as always, your host, Shane Dick Dragon Koski. What's going on, bro?
I'm going to be honest, I was very confused by what you just said, and then I remembered we're talking about cameos today, and then I put two and two together. So I'm here. I'm on board. I got it.
Maybe Shane is making a cameo in his own show.
Yeah, I'm making a cameo somewhere else today. I don't know.
I can't wait until there's an episode where I do introduce you as a guest on your own show. I can't wait for that one too. But we are indeed talking about cameos today, which are our top 5 of them, in fact, as the show would have it. And this subject was nominated by Ryan Trainer, who has a longtime fan and patron of the show. Thank you, Ryan. And if you also want to nominate and vote on topics, join our Patreon. Every patron can vote, no matter what tier you are at. And if you're a patron and you are in our Discord, just head over to the top 5 suggestions area and say what type of topic you would like to see on a flight. And hey, it could be a topic that you vote on in the near future. You never know. But that's enough of that for now. Let's get into the topic here today. Shane, we have some spotlights to focus on, as it were.
We do.
So what is your number 5 top cameo in a video game?
Number 5.
Right. Well, I am going to start my list with what I think is actually a little bit of an obscure one, which honestly is why it made it onto my list, but stayed at number 5, is just because I really like that this is a thing that exists. But if you weren't really aware, then I don't think you'd even know that you were witnessing a cameo. And that is Ric Flair as Douglas Hill in Command & Conquer Red Alert 3.
That's awesome.
Yep. Good old Ric Flair. He's so that's what you'd expect, right? But he's surprisingly subdued through the majority of his FMV cutscenes.
Eventually you got to crash from all that cocaine.
Yeah, well, that's true. Yes. Although he does fit in his signature woo at least once. But I just thought that was really great because, like I said, if you don't know who Ric Flair is or was when you're going to play CNC Red Alert 3, this would, you would just go through just thinking this was some random actor in an FMV and you're like, whatever. But for those of you, who were involved or still are involved in like the wrestling scene and know who he is, then it's like a nice little treat. And honestly, it's interesting to see like a different side of the man, because he is playing this sort of stereotypical, like, jarhead kind of military guy, but he's definitely not as boisterous as his wrestling character. And so it's interesting to see like that other side of Ric Flair. So I just thought that was a really great one to throw in there. And so he's kicking off my list.
Yeah, that's very impressive too, because I mean, wrestling is real, and they're probably not used to acting.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, he must have trained a lot prior to, recording those for Command and Conquer. Yeah, definitely.
My number 5 is a little unorthodox. I was also going to go obscure. I was going to say Sonic the Hedgehog and Crusader of Senti, but I bumped that just before I started recording. But my number 5 is a little bit unorthodox. It's not as obscure, but it is a different type of cameo, and that cameo are Konami games in Metal Gear Solid. So Hideo Kojima, he loves to throw in little bits of cameos in a lot of his projects. Infamously Snatcher, where you see a Metal Gear in a strip club, as well as Sparkster in the Sega CD version, which is really cool. But in Metal Gear Solid, there's a part where you run into an enemy. This is a little bit of a spoiler, so you haven't heard it, bear with me here. But you run into a boss called Psycho Mantis. And Psycho Mantis, what he does is that he reads your memory card. And this was really cool back in 1998. And so he'll read your memory card, and if you have save files from certain games, he will comment on them. So those games are Castlevania Symphony of the Night, Azure Dreams, Vandal Hearts, I think, and Suikoden. And he'll say, oh, so you like Suikoden. Oh, you like Azure Dreams, a Castlevania fan, huh? So you like Vandal Hearts. And then he'll say, so you like role-playing games and you like Konami games, which I think is a really cool recognition of a fan of Konami. If you're a fan of a certain company's works, which back then, that was perfectly fine to be if you were a fan of Konami. Just have the game recognize that. And it's so cool. I remember how cool it was when he said for my save file, it was Suikoden and Azure Dreams. I was like, it just blew my mind. It's like, how does this game know that I've been playing this game? How does it know it's on my memory card? I can't believe it. So yeah, it's not really a cameo per se, but just the absolute coolness of something in a video game recognizing you're playing other works within that media itself is amazing, and I love it.
You know what? I'll allow it.
Okay.
It's a good pick.
Number 4.
All right. Well, moving on with my list, I'm gonna go with Sean Bean in Hitman 2. Now, not the original Hitman 2. The rebooted Hitman 2. I should be clear about that. So and the reason I picked this, apart from the fact that I just like Sean Bean as an actor, but I picked it because of how they kind of leaned into the meme of him or his characters dying in like almost everything he's in. That's kind of a known thing, and it has been for quite a while now. And so they had him play a character called the Undying, and he was an elusive target. And if you weren't familiar with how Hitman and Hitman 2 were kind of doing their sort of, I'm going to say pseudo seasonal type stuff, their game as a service type offerings. The elusive targets were assassination targets that would only show up in the game for a very limited amount of time, that you could get achievements and special stuff for actually successfully assassinating. And Sean Bean made his cameo as one of those. So the unfortunate part of that is that unless they decide to bring that back at some point, you will never see it again because it was a limited time event. But just the fact that they really leaned into that joke of making his character the Undying, and his backstory being that he was like this mythically unkillable like guy, I just really appreciated that. And so that's why it's here on my list at number 4.
My number 4 is Michael Jackson in Space Channel 5. I love Space Channel 5. I think it's an adorable game. I think it's a lot of fun. It's not a perfect rhythm game, but it has so much charm and a ton of atmosphere. And then when you see Michael Jackson come into that game and just start being a character that rolls along with you for some of it, I I thought it was insanely cool. I think it fit the game just perfectly. And I do like Michael Jackson's music. I know he's no stranger to controversy, and I'm definitely not endorsing any of that shit. But I am a big fan of his music. I think it's fantastic. And to have the King of Pop in a semi-obscure Sega Dreamcast game, I thought it was extraordinarily cool. So yeah, Michael Jackson, Space Channel 5.
Yeah, that kind of reminds me. It almost made my list just for how like weird it was, but ultimately I
Yeah.
dropped it. But there's a very similar one with Phil Collins being in a mobile spin-off of GTA in Vice City Stories.
That was really weird.
Yeah, Phil Collins being a pretty huge get as far as a celebrity cameo, and he ends up at the end of the quest line once you finish it, playing "In the Air Tonight" because obviously.
Mhm.
But it's really odd that he was in a spin-off title. You'd have thought he would have been in the main line.
Number 3.
So moving up along my list, we are at number 3. And even though I personally have not played this game, I really I can't not include it because I love this man. He's like, I really hope nothing comes out at some point about him because he's just so wholesome. And that is Keanu Reeves as Silverhand in Cyberpunk 2077.
Nice.
Keanu is awesome. I've always enjoyed him in just about everything from Bill and Ted to The Matrix to pretty much everything in between. I still think that even though it's not accurate to the graphic novels, I absolutely love him as Constantine. That movie's fucking fantastic. And yeah, I honestly don't have a lot to say about it other than it's fucking Keanu Reeves and he's cool as hell. So there you go.
All right. My number 3 is Balthier in Final Fantasy Tactics War of the Lions. I am not a big Final Fantasy 12 fan. In fact, I rather hate it. But one of the characters I love in Final Fantasy 12 is Balthier. I think he is a great character. I think he's fun. And then Final Fantasy Tactics didn't have it in the original one because it couldn't, because Final Fantasy 12 didn't exist yet. But when it was re-released on the PSP, Final Fantasy 12 certainly did exist. So in addition to having Cloud, which is kind of a lame character in Final Fantasy Tactics, and I guess Aerith is sort of in there, but not really, you get Balthier is another character that can join your party. And he is OP, and he has like great gun skills that make Mustadio blush, in addition to just being an overall badass. No, he doesn't really have his trademark charm because just like every playable NPC in Final Fantasy Tactics, they kind of get forgotten about and just kind of shuffled over to Ramza and in his trials and tribulations, as opposed to anyone that was in your party as a plot line character at all, ever. So it is nice to see Balthier in there. It is nice to see a good Final Fantasy cameo that's not relatively cringe and works out really well. So yeah, Balthier is my number 3.
Number 2.
All right. Well, my number 2 on my list of celebrity cameos is it's multiple because they kind of all showed up in this game, but I'm grouping them all together, and that is Brutal Legend, and that included Ozzy Osbourne as the Guardian of Metal, appropriately. And he functions as sort of like your upgrade guy in the game. You get Lemmy from Motorhead, whose bass playing heals others in the game, which is fantastic. And then, of course, you have Rob Halford of Judas Priest as Baron, who is the leader of a pack of pyromaniac bikers. And not only are they, not only did they lend their voices to these characters, but their actual likenesses as well. So and I suppose I should mention that, obviously Jack Black, I say obvious, I guess if you're not familiar with the game, you wouldn't know, but Jack Black is in there as well because he's playing the main character that you play as, the protagonist in the game. But just being able to like interact with all of these like legends of heavy metal in this game is just really, really cool. Obviously, especially if you are into that kind of music, it is a treat.
My number 2, and this should probably be my number 1 now that I'm looking at my number 1, but I'm going to stick to my guns. My number 2 is Buzz Aldrin in Mass Effect 3. Because that is a great scene and it is a great cameo in a space opera. I think it's probably, you could not find a more appropriate person to make a cameo if you're going to have one in that game. So kudos to Buzz Aldrin in being one of the premier pioneering astronauts in world history. I'm not just going to say American history because he was one of the first people on the moon. So good for him. And yeah, I mean, space exploration, that's what it's kind of all about, and just exploring. And maybe not so much Buzz Aldrin was saving the world from moon aliens, but you may never know that. But if he did, it's even more appropriate. But yeah, Buzz Aldrin gets my number 2 in Mass Effect 3.
Yeah, that's a really good pick. I in my research for this episode, I saw that a few times, and I wasn't going to include it because I actually haven't played Mass Effect 3 yet. I've played the first two, but not the third one. But that's just a great addition to that game for sure.
Number 1.
All right, we are at my number 1. And I actually last minute 11th hour flip flopped here because I had Brutal Legend as my number 1, but the more that I thought about it, I think this makes more sense for me. And that is the entire band Blind Guardian, the power metal band in Sacred 2, the action RPG. This is such a great inclusion. So I have Sacred 2 for my Xbox 360, and I actually was not even aware that they were involved in this at all, although they wrote the theme song for the game, which I was also not aware of when I, purchased this game like secondhand at GameStop or whatever. But throwing it in, I bought it because it was an ARPG, and I love ARPGs. And though I haven't finished the game, mostly because it has some very serious performance issues on the 360, which is a bummer because the game itself is pretty good. There's an entire quest line that starts with you talking to an NPC who is the lead singer of Blind Guardian, but they're all, he's dressed as though he were a part of this, medieval fantasy world. And the quest line culminates with a full ass music video cutscene of the entire band, who went through mocap, by the way, to realistically represent themselves in the game, of them playing the theme song to Sacred 2 to an audience of like orcs and goblins and like other monsters and stuff. And it is fucking fantastic. And doubly so because I was not expecting it at all. And it's just such a great, there's so much effort that went into this for what is essentially a throwaway side quest. It doesn't necessarily have any meaningful impact on the game as a whole, but just the fact that they went to these lengths to include the entire band, who I like, by the way, just outside of the game, but to include them in the game and have this whole music video thing, it's so good. It was so good. It was such a pleasant surprise. So that is why it is my number 1. It's an ARPG with a power metal band cameo. I can't think of too many more things that would speak to me as a person. So
that definitely sounds like a Shane cameo if I've ever heard one.
Definitely.
That is the perfect one for you. So my number 1, the reason I'm doing this is because I always love a little bit of playful smack talk between companies. And this is a series. These all kind of, 2 of these 3 series are near and dear to my heart in some form or fashion. One kind of being one because it's just a big video game one. And that is Erdrick or Link in the original Final Fantasy. And you might be asking, where are they in this game? A lot of you already know this if you've been around since the old days of Final Fantasy. But when you get to the second town in Final Fantasy, or one of the, I think third town, Elf Town, whatever it is, there's a graveyard there. And in the original NES release, I think on the Famicom, if you go to one of the graves, it says, "Here lies Link." And then when they brought it over to the United States, because Nintendo published it in the United States, the grave was changed to Here Lies Erdrick. Erdrick is the hero of the Dragon Quest series of the first 3 games. It's the legend of the hero Erdrick. So this is essentially Squaresoft just kind of smack talking Nintendo and saying, yeah, we just buried Link with our Final Fantasy game. Or when they brought it over to the United States, they said, Here Lies Erdrick, to kind of slam it down that way. I don't know what it is today. I'm not sure if it still says Erdrick or if it says Link in all of the remasters, but it's still there, just having a little bit of playful smack talk. And because I'm so familiar with these series, especially when you go back and, they weren't as big or as consuming as they are today, or at their peak, I should more say, it's really fun to see them all kind of poke fun at each other in this fashion and that sort of cameo. And that's why I love it so much. And it's just one of those nostalgic memories that I hold on to and just kind of chuckle when I see it. So yeah, my number 1 is Erdrick or Link in a tomb in Final Fantasy.
Pretty good. It's pretty. I also really like that you took the celebrity cameo topic and turned it into video game characters that showed up in other video games.
I see them as celebrities.
I mean, yeah, that's valid. It's valid.
They're celebrities in my world. Maybe I
It's
didn't
real
understand
to
the
me,
assignment.
damn it.
Just like wrestling.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Maybe I didn't understand the assignment, but I still followed through on it. I get an A for effort.
You do.
It's over.
You do. You get your participation trophy. Congratulations.
Hooray!
Well, on that note, there you have it. Our top 5 celebrity cameos in video games. So as always, feel free to leave us some commentary, some feedback. If you liked what we had on our lists, let us know. If you thought our lists were trash, I mean, you can tell us that too. I mean, it'll hurt our feelings, but we'll get over it. That's fine.
Yes.
And if you want to share what you would pick, then you can just jump into our public, totally free to join Discord and let us know. Go into that episode discussion channel and tell us like, hey, this is what I would have picked, and my list is clearly superior to yours. And while you're there, you might want to check out a lot of what else is going on. We've got so many different things in the Discord going on all the time. We've got challenges, we've got the review crew just chatting about different things. There's a lot to check out, so I highly recommend you get in there if you are not already. And to get there, you just got to use the link tree. It's so simple. Linktree/retro hangover is going to get you where you need to go, whether that is the Discord or perhaps it's our merch store, or maybe the Patreon if you want to support the show in that fashion and get some pretty sweet bennies out of the deal. Or perhaps you want to check out the YouTube where we upload all of these episodes as well as our VODs from Twitch. And Twitch, we play games over there on a certain night of the week, usually, unless there's a major holiday or, I don't know, one of us doesn't feel like it. I mean, listen,
That's usually a good
we're
reason.
we're not professional streamers, okay? But when we are there, Chris, when can they find us? What are we doing?
By the way, ad free too, because
That's true.
we couldn't be fucked.
Yeah, we're just too
figure that
lazy.
out.
Our laziness
That's-
is your benefit. You're welcome.
There it is. But you can find our laziness in action if you go to twitch.tv/retrohangover at 9 p.m. Eastern time on Sunday. And yeah, just head over there if you're bored on a Sunday evening, because we're here to entertain you. We are your dancing monkeys. So at 9 p.m. Eastern time on Sunday evening, head over to twitch.tv/retrohangover for a great community, a great time with great conversations. And we hope to see you there.
All right. Well, I guess with all of that being said, until next time.
Play with your I wish I chose Carl Sagan in Kadash joysticks.